Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Carolina Weather Group. This is the Wednesday, September 20th, 2017 edition of the Carolina Weather Group. Welcome to our little Wednesday hangout where we talk about all things weather. Tonight we have on with us CrowdHydrology. It's kind of a mesonet program, if you will, of river stream gauges that are reported to through crowdsourcing. So we'll get into that tonight with our guests, Chris Lowry and Mike Feenin, as they have kind of brought this CrowdHydrology to fruition. And they're going to talk to us tonight about their product and maybe how you can help out as well. So this is a live program. If you are watching tonight via Facebook Live or Periscope or our YouTube page, or if you're listening to our podcast later on in the week, if you have any questions, please feel free to send them our way. You can do that one of a few ways. You can submit those either on Periscope or Facebook Live. Just send the questions in the little comment box there. Or if you're wanting to use Twitter, you can tweet them at us at Carolina WX, or even leave us a comment on our Facebook page. We'll monitor those throughout the show, and if we have any questions, we'll make sure to get those answered. So again, we have a CrowdHydrology on with us tonight. Before we do that, James has got some information for us. This is the 8 p.m. advisories on Hurricane Maria and maybe Hurricane Jose. We didn't talk about Jose, but James has them both. So, James, I'll let you go ahead and tell us about what the latest updates say.
Yeah, if you're joining us live right now on our enhanced broadcast on Facebook or Periscope or on YouTube, you're seeing off to the side some of the latest satellite imageries we have on these storms. The top one is Tropical Storm Jose. We have some nice rotation. The other day was really even hard to find on satellite, but we can see it now. And Hurricane Maria is a real definite strong hurricane as it came across Puerto Rico earlier today. Let's look very briefly here at these 8 o'clock updates from the National Hurricane Center. Starting first with the latest track that just came in regarding Tropical Storm Jose. He's Tropical Storm. He's got 65 mile per hour sustained winds. He is moving right now, northeast at 8 miles per hour, but you can see, look how tight and compact that cone is there from the Hurricane Center. You can see not moving very quickly or very far at all. And a matter of fact, if you caught in that cone, it's actually essentially going to start moving backwards now, or at least traditionally to what we see as it begins to kind of do a loop-de-loop and make its way back towards the northeast coast, where we again are watching for beach erosion and windy conditions along the coastline there. There is that cone once again. That orange area, that yellowish area, is the current wind field for tropical storm force winds. Let's take a look now. Here is the 8 o'clock advisory from the National Hurricane Center regarding Hurricane Maria, Category 2 storm with 110 mile per hour sustained winds moving northwest at 12 miles per hour. Here is the latest forecast cone. It's expected to strengthen again into a major hurricane, so that means at least a Category 3. It was a Category 4 as it made landfall on Puerto Rico. It did weaken a little bit thanks to the interaction with the land there, but it left behind some devastating damage as we begin to get those initial reports in from the island itself. You can see the storm that is moving northwest at 12 miles per hour will have that general momentum as it does strengthen back into a major hurricane. Those red there, those are other islands that are under hurricane warnings over the course of the next few days. And as that storm begins to move northward, it will move up between somewhere the east coast of the United States, the Carolinas, and Bermuda by the time we look ahead to this weekend and the start of next week. And we will kind of talk a little bit more at the end of today's show what the forecast track could possibly look like after that, because as you always see with that cone of uncertainty, as it begins to get a little bit wider, that eye of that storm could be anywhere from just offshore the Carolinas to closer to Bermuda. Closer to Bermuda would obviously be lesser of an impact for the Carolinas, but there are a lot of factors, a lot of steering currents out there in the atmosphere, and we'll be breaking those down for you coming up a little later this hour on this week's edition of the Carolina Weather Group. Scotty?
All right, thank you, James, for that. So stick with us towards the end of the show. Shay will give us a breakdown of what's going on and what's already taken place. Before we do that, let's quickly go around the panel. Charleston guys, Shay, Jared, how's the weather been down in the Low Country?
Go ahead, Jared.
Got to unmute my stuff. It usually helps to talk when you're unmuted. So, well, it was hot today. 91 in mid-September. It's not unheard of. Or a record is 98 on this day. And let's stay a little warm, get a little stormier, a little upper trough action kind of cuts off and gets us a little bit, some slight rain chances in the afternoon. Watching Maria knock on wood, knock on any wood-like surface that you have, Maria will stay off of our shore after the nerve-wracking Hurricane Irma. But yeah, we're going to cool off real nice, get a little fall-like a little over the weekend, and then warm back up into next week. So yeah, that's about it. Nice and boring, just as I really like it. So after the last few weeks. So Shay,
no, that's about exactly right. It's warm. Yep, warm and humid is the key here. We did have some mild sea breezes today, some modest sea breezes, actually anywhere from 9 to 13 knots, just inside the coastal breaks. We're seeing 11 to 15. So if you're a fisherman or a boater, we may see something similar to this tomorrow. Again, we're going to start to see a northeast wind work its way down the coastline into this weekend, which Jared just referenced to, a cooler air pattern. So usually when we get a high pressure ridge building up and down the eastern seaboard, we get this cooler northerly wind. And then we have a possibility for the wind starting to come up as Maria lifts from the south. And we'll get into that later in the show when we discuss the tropics, but it may increase the gradient just a little bit to give an east-northeast or easterly wind up in the mid to upper teens by as late as Saturday or even into most of the day on Sunday. So keep that in mind if you're a wind and water sportsman. Back to you, Scotty.
All right. And James, I don't know, did Charlotte get up to 90 degrees today? I know they were close.
I don't know, but I will look real fast while I do acknowledge, and that's exactly what I was going to say. It was very warm here today. I'm happy I did not put the shorts away or the T-shirts. Still have those out. I thought about a week or so ago going ahead and putting some of that stuff away and reorganizing the closet. Glad I haven't just yet. But as I do pull up the information from the Charlotte airport today via the National Weather Service. Let's see, the 6-hour maximum does show 90 degrees. That was recorded at probably an off hour at about 3-4 o'clock.
Awesome. Well, we were 87 here in the North Carolina foothills, so quite toasty as well. We did have a few pop-up showers in the mountains, but once they moved off the mountain, they just dissipated fairly quickly. So they were not able to maintain themselves as they took the trip off the mountain. So with that, let's get in with our guests tonight. Let's bring in Chris and Mike, who are with CrowdHydrology. Guys, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
All right, guys. Well, I'll let you guys kind of start off, maybe introduce yourself since you're a first-time guest. A lot of our viewers and listeners have not seen you guys yet. So maybe kind of talk about your career path to where you guys are right now. And Chris, we'll start with you.
Sure. So my name's Chris Lowry. I'm an associate professor at the University of Buffalo in the Geology department. And my subspecialty is hydrogeology. And so actually I study groundwater flow in the subsurface, mostly quantity, not as much quality. And in kind of talking about what we're going to talk about today, I actually study groundwater just kind of at the interface between groundwater and surface water. So I'm very interested in the fluxes between groundwater and surface water. And so I've been at the University of Buffalo now for about 7 years. Those are the kinds of things I do.
We have to ask you, how do you like the lake effect snow?
You know, so I live north of the city of Buffalo, and so I actually don't get hit by the lake effect snow.
Okay.
The university will get hit by the lake effect snow, and 2 winters ago we had 7 feet of snow in one storm, and I live far enough north that I think I got maybe 10 inches.
Well, 10 inches is still a big quality here in the Carolinas, but yeah.
But in Buffalo, you don't brag about 10 inches.
Yeah, it's nothing up there. Yeah. You guys can function pretty well. So, well, Chris, welcome to the show. Thanks for being on. Let's bring in Mike. Mike, talk to us about you. How have you got to where you are right now?
Yeah, so my name is Mike Feenin, and I grew up in Minnesota, but made a circuitous path through Japan and California, but ended up here in Wisconsin when I finished my PhD about 10 years ago. I'm a research hydrologist with the U.S. Geological Survey, and I do kind of similar work to Chris. Not surprisingly, we've partnered on CrowdHydrology, although it's a little on the edge of our usual day-to-day work, which you'll hear about in a little bit. So I'm also involved with this interaction between groundwater systems and surface water. Water is water. It moves on the surface, it rains, it flows in streams, it seeps into the ground, comes back out. So, we like to think of it as one system. And a lot of the work that we do related to that ends up being with computer models. And so I do a lot of modeling, a lot of uncertainty analysis, and parameter estimation are really my subspecialty within hydrogeology, like Chris.
Very cool. Well, we'll start with you. Kind of talk to us about maybe how CrowdHydrology got its beginning. What inspired you guys to start this program?
You know, I'm actually going to turn that back to Chris because he started the project. I came in a little bit later, so let me turn it over to Chris for that.
Yeah. So one of the issues that we have is we don't have measurements in a fine spatial scale. And so one of the reasons that this idea kind of came up, the basic idea is we want to measure stream flow. And so we want to measure how streams are transmitting water through a certain watershed. And so the idea was, how can we get data in data poor regions, and how can we get that for a low price? And so our basic idea was that we thought that it might be possible to crowdsource some of these data. And so we set up a simple, it's a gauge staff. It's like a giant ruler. And we set this giant ruler up in a stream. And we simply put a little tiny sign on top of this giant ruler. And the sign said, please text us the water levels. And there was a phone number. And we decided we'd try this at one location just to see if it worked. And sure enough, people started texting us water levels. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. And so now we have, I think we have about 100 stations up across the United States. I think we're in maybe 11 states. It's hard to tell right now.
Very cool. So doing this, how did, any program is not free to start. So how did you guys get the funding, or what was the catalyst to get this going?
Yeah. So this it's not free to start, but this is really inexpensive. So basically, I was a new faculty member at the University of Buffalo, and I had some startup money, and I decided I'd throw $500 into this and try it out. So I bought some equipment. I literally laminated signs at Kinko's. I set everything up, and it actually, the technology runs through a Google Voice account, which then goes to a Gmail account. And then I was manually pulling these text messages out of this Gmail account. And that's actually where Mike comes along. And so we were sitting at a meeting, and Mike was asking what I was doing, and I was asking what he was doing. And all of a sudden, I said, well, I'm doing this crowdsourcing thing. And Mike was really interested. And so I talked to him a little bit about it, and he said, wait, you're doing this manually? This is crazy. Like, you cannot upscale this. This is impossible to upscale. And so I went back into a talk, and I was sitting there, and Mike literally came in the middle of someone's talk, tapped me on the shoulder and said, Chris, can you give me the password to your Gmail account? I'm going to automate this. And by the end of the day, I think Mike had it automated with a pipe. Is that right?
Yeah, basically there was one. And now this is a like super nerdy detail, but one of the things was these signs are very general. The other question I had for Chris was, what format do these messages take? Like, what do you ask people to do? And he's like, oh, it's just a sign. It just says text the height of the water and a string that has the identifies the gauge. But there was no order, so we had to do a little bit of artificial intelligence kind of work to try to be able to interpret those messages. So 98% of the code was done that day, and then the other 2% took a few months to sort of make it so it was pretty robust and try to figure out, like, actually the proudest achievement to me is we got one message that said the water level at whatever this one location, and then they named the stream, and they said that they were near a bridge and the fish were biting and it was kind of warm, and that there was a pretty high turbidity, and then parentheses they said turbidity is where the water is kind of cloudy. Like, so that was helpful. And but then they did put the water height, and we were actually able to parse that crazy long message with all that delightful information that we didn't need, and be able to get a reasonable measurement out of it. So yeah, and it's I'm really committed to open source development, partly because I work for the government, and this was largely nights and weekends kind of funding.
This was 100% nights and weekends.
Yeah, but I'm really I do a lot of other development in my work, and I'm really committed to open source software, making things available for people. I figure the taxpayers are paying me to do my job, so they should be able to use the results of my work. So I did this all in Python, and then and over the last few years, we've had the fortune for Chris to find some undergraduate computer science students. Turns out they're better coding than 40-something geologists like me. So they've made some great improvements, and the project continues.
Sounds like you and Jared and James would get along very well, right?
I was just wondering, so besides unsolicited fishing reports, what type of data are you looking for? Is it just water level? Is there other data that you're asking folks to submit in their user-generated submissions?
So right now, we're just asking for water levels. We just installed some signs actually on Saturday, where we're also asking for stream temperature at a few locations. And so there's some interest in folks that are interested in protecting fish habitat to not only know the stream level or the stream stage, but also know what the temperature is in terms of thinking about hydrologic niches where things like trout may wanna hang out. But right now it's pretty simple. It could get more complicated, but then there's other associated problems with asking for more.
Yeah, if I could jump in real quick, one criticism that we've received is, well, why don't you have this like a fancy smartphone app? Like, why are you guys using text messages that's so old? And there are a couple of reasons for that. One is the easiest reason is that it's a lot easier to just like interpret a Gmail account than to write an app, which, by the way, we do have one. But the other main thing is, we were looking at the demographics of cell phone ownership. So just a couple years ago, it was up to 85% of Americans carry a cell phone, but it was still only about 50% that were carrying smartphones. That grows every year. But and then now you think about, you get out of the city and you get to rural areas where most of our gauges are, that percentage starts to shift a lot. And then I'm imagining the activation energy. You go see a sign and our sign says text in the number. So, and I've actually, when we were out servicing gauges, had to show people how to use the text message on their phone. But what if it said, well, go to this site and then download this app and install it and then send in the message? I suspect we'd get less participation. So that's actually one motivation for keeping it really simple. There's some value to that.
Yeah, and we talk about this in terms of barrier of entry. So we want to keep the barrier of entry as low as possible in order for people to participate. And I'll say honestly, like, a lot of work went into developing a smartphone app, and the barrier of entry is just too high for now.
Guys, this is really fascinating stuff. This seems to me to be a real grassroots type of sort of concept that you guys have started. One thing comes to mind. I know we talked off screen last night and we did an equipment check, and I mentioned CocoRoz. And for the viewers out there, CocoRoz is the rain network that is allows citizens to get certified equipment to do rainfall measurements, to report into this giant network that they've worked on for decades. And so the National Weather Service uses it, and they're actually partnered with them. Is this something that you guys are working towards? And it was crowdsourcing. Is this some similar template that you're working to get more citizens getting your data out there into a network?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, CocoRoz is the gold standard, right? On any given day, between 7,500 to 8,000 people respond in terms of what precipitation is. We'd love to see this grow. Yes, we would love to get to more rural areas where we can collect stream stage. And the reason behind that is you need to have a historical record to understand how things are changing in the future. And so this is one way where we can have, again, that low barrier of entry and collect historical data of stream stage in locations that we just can't put more expensive instruments. But I can't. With Mike and I kind of working on this nights and weekends, it actually turns out to be a lot of work, and I am just really surprised how well CocoRoz can keep everything up, because they're dealing with orders of magnitude more data than we are.
And Chris, you're talking about the gauges. How do you determine, where do you guys determine where you want to set these up? Is this kind of like ideal locations you want them, or is people volunteer and say, hey, you can put this up in our area?
People are volunteering. So Mike and I started out and we put gauges in locations that we were interested in terms of our fundamental research. But now it completely is grassroots. We'll have some, you'll get an email that comes in that says, hey, I have this stream or I have this pond, near my school or near this community park. We'd like to put a gauge up. And our answer is always yes. And so now how the system works is you may email us and we'll say, yep, sure. Here's the installation guide on how to put this gauge up. And we'll cover all the computer side of things. And all we need you to do is buy the gauge. And we'll send you a PDF of the sign. You just print it out, laminate it, put it on, and then we're live within 24 hours.
Now these instruments, it seems like they would go really well with reservoirs and lakes as well, where you have constant flux up and down. Ponds, certain areas they tend to sort of self-regulate, but when you get into like the watershed, into the estuaries along the coast, reservoirs of lakes inland, what kind of instrumentation are we talking about? Do you have a picture of it? Is it something we can look at? And what are the costs of these things?
Yeah, so it's a giant ruler. Is this a USGS Class A gauge? Is that right, Mike?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Class A staff gauge.
Yeah, and the cost of the gauge is I think we're getting them for $35 right now, plus a few parts from Home Depot. You can put one in for $50 or less.
That's pretty good, considering the water level gauges out there that NOS uses along at least with the portions of the coastline, significantly higher in price and much higher maintenance. How durable are these instruments? Do they withstand debris knocking into it, or how do they work? Tell us a little bit more about them.
So it depends what kind of installation you have. So normally we pound in one of these Home Depot green fence posts, and then screw this plate or this giant ruler onto that fence post. We have lost a few of those during high flows, but we have gauges that have been up since 2011 and are just going strong. Many times we have to replace the signs, but the gauges are usually just go strong, and they're metal gauges, so they can handle it. There's occasionally you get some muck on them, and you need to scrub them off, but they're robust. And the thing is, if we lose them, you're out $50 and you just install a new one.
Right. So which is great. I mean, that's very cost effective to have something like that that's going to last quite a bit. Is it something that kind of floats up and down in the water, or if it gets totally submerged, does it stop giving you readings, or how does the gauge kind of work during real time events?
Yeah. So it's fixed to the stream bed, and so it's a ruler in water. You see the water level rise up on the ruler, and all we're asking people to do is tell us where the water level is on the ruler. There are times where we've had text messages that say that the water level is above the gauge, and there are times where, and that brings up a good point. These data that we're getting are normally during periods where the weather is really nice, because people aren't kind of outside walking around in heavy storms or anything like that. So we are missing some of that storm event data, which is probably more interesting to you folks, and it's interesting to us. But because of the method that we're using to collect these data, we're biased toward better weather days.
And Mike, I want to bring you into this. How this information that you guys receive, what is it used for? What is that data? What is the data you guys are wanting from this, and kind of help you out with your regular everyday job?
Well, there's a couple different kinds of the data. So Chris is, again, mentioned that he's doing a lot of work with these with groundwater, surface water action and interaction in streams. And so in a lot of his area in the Northeast, where a lot of the gauges are, those streams are really important for his research. For me, one of the big issues that I'm getting involved in Wisconsin is lake levels. And this technique works just fine for lakes too. In fact, in some ways it's easier because the water's a little stiller a lot of the time. You can put them, if you put it on a fishing pier, you get a lot of good measurements. If you put it at a boat landing, by the way, which we thought would be great because there's lots of traffic, imagine somebody trying to back up a semi in downtown Chicago that's never driven a truck. That's a boat landing, right? It's like, no, it's a mess. Nobody's in a zenful kind of, hey, that's pretty cool. They're doing some science. Let me help out. No, they're trying to back up a trailer. So, but anyway, so for lake levels, that's going to be an increasingly important for my work in Wisconsin, where there's a lot of agriculture, a lot of increase in irrigation. And so some lake levels have dropped quite a bit. And we get very occasional measurements of those through our normal programs. So it's really exciting both to potentially get more data, that we need, but also to engage citizens and engage the people that are consumers of this information. With a lot of the kind of challenges we have these days with trust of science and that kind of thing going on, I think if people contribute data and then they go back and look at that data again, they're going to realize, that there's the number that I put in, and the next one that came in was probably pretty similar, and then a little bit later it's higher or lower. And that's, I think there's a lot of benefit just to that engagement piece of things.
So I want to bring in the website here. Looks like there's a little error. Here we go. Well, I know that map was just working a little bit ago. That might be on my end from Chrome. Let me see if I can refresh and get that back up. Google Maps may be having some issue there. But either way, let's take a look at your website. Tell us a little bit about it and how to navigate. For the average person that wants to be interested and they come to your website, what's the first thing you suggest they do?
Yeah. So is it possible for me to share my screen?
Yes, it is. If you will go up to the sidebar here on the left-hand side, the second little option there says screen share.
Got it. All right.
There you
go. Does that help?
Yes.
Yep, I've got you. I'm presenting you to everybody now. I'll let mine go so you could do yours.
Wonderful.
So, there we go.
So this is the basic map of our website, and it's not perfect, but for a couple of hydrologists, it's not too bad. And so what you can see is all of the locations where we have CrowdHydrology gauges. Because we're in the Great Lakes Basin, you see most of the gauges in our basin. You can zoom in, and let me just zoom into actually our first station that we put in. This is at a Buffalo Audubon Society site at Beaver Meadows. And you can click on a station, and what we can do is we can go and we can see the water levels. And this is what these data look like. So the data set that you're looking right here goes from January 2012 to current. And you can see that there is an increase in water levels from January 2012 up until January 2015. This site actually had a beaver come in and dam the stream up, and so that's why the water level has raised. And you can just track along this, and you can see what every citizen science data point looks like all the way along. And there's some places where my cursor is right now where there's really fine data. And then there's other places where there's big gaps. Notice that's January and February. Not a lot of people out in Western New York that time of year. And then there's some places like this where you see the water levels seem to be consistent, and then there's a big drop right here. And that's something that is likely due to someone sending in a measurement that was incorrect. And Mike and I have been really straightforward about this, and we call these our ugly babies, and we publish everything that we have, and we say, hey, there's ugly babies in here, and this is a good opportunity for people to think about how there is uncertainty in data and there's errors related to data.
Yeah,
That's really cool. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Michael.
Oh, that's cool. These plates are like 3 feet tall. So we also check for that overall range, right? So if we get a message at a particular site that is a number greater than the top of the gauge or lower than the bottom of the gauge, we do throw that out. Yep. And there's a couple other quality control things we do like that. But yeah, there are a few flyers in there. But I will say that the root mean squared error, for all you data nerds, for these measurements is about the same as the distance between the two adjacent lines on the ruler. So basically, it's a question of people deciding, do I go to this one or that one, the higher or the lower? But they're not, they're doing a really good job. When people text in data, it's really quite reasonable.
And that's actually based on analysis over 4 summers at 4 different gauges in 3 different states. So, it's not just that one state is smarter than another state. Everybody's doing the same thing, and the error is really low.
I got 2 guys that come to mind here, and these guys are great at recruiting armies of civilians to get information in. Tim Buckley in Greensboro, North Carolina. He's chief met down there. If you want to I would suggest reaching out to him, and Grant Gilmore down in Tampa Bay. These guys are pros at getting people to help out. So there's two ideas. I like the idea of this. We can push this through Carolina Weather Group viewers, and yeah, I mean, this is a great concept. I love it.
Yeah, and we're an open group, and so if anybody wants to put one of these gauges up, shoot us an email through our website, and we'll get you set up, and we'll get you up on the website, and we'll go from there.
I want to kind of reset here. It's 8:45 here on the Carolina Weather Group. We do have CrowdHydrology with us. A lot of viewers turning in tonight, and this is a really neat project. They want more information, so we'll let our guests towards the end of the show kind of let you know how you can get in touch with them. I do want to note that we do see your comments about the tropics. We're going to hit that as well. But Chris, I wanted to come back to you for just a little bit. You work at the University of Buffalo. How does this information that you guys get, how does that help you guys out there at the university?
So it really comes down to getting data in data scarce regions. And so if I was to go and put a pressure transducer, which is kind of our standard instrument that we measure stream stage, it cost me about $1,200 to put a pressure transducer in a stream. And so there are some issues with fluxes of water going into the Great Lakes, moving through rural regions where we need to know what the stage is and what the flow is in these streams. And so this idea kind of spouted from, we need more data. How are we going to get that for a limited amount of money? And that's really the key there. It's getting data that we couldn't get otherwise with the funds that we have, basically.
Okay, I've got one more question for you guys. If I'm one of the viewers here tonight and I'm interested in doing this, what kind of advice do you have for where do I start? If I have a pond in the backyard, or if there's a river down the street, or if I live on the water in the harbor, for instance, what advice would you give for a higher priority location or target for one of these gauges?
I think nature centers or places where the public walks have been our biggest contributors. I mean, we throw up some really big numbers. What we have found, like Mike said, was boat docks where people are putting boats in, horrible. The other places, we thought that trout fishermen would be huge. And so we put in these gauges where there was a bunch of folks that would fish for trout. And it turns out that the folks that are out trout fishing, they don't want to take their cell phone with them. They don't want people to get a hold of them. And so they don't have their phone, and they're like, oh, that's really nice. And I hear this from them all the time. Oh, yeah, we see your gauge every single time I go out fishing. And I say, have you ever sent it a text message? Oh, no. Why would I bring my phone fishing? Really, I think the key is places where public hike and walk, and nature centers. Those are the ones that just throw up really, really big numbers. And for example, we have a site outside of Rochester, New York, and there's two gentlemen that walk their dog every single day. And over the summer, this was 2 summers ago, we ended up with 800 measurements at that one location. And two measurements from 2 different ID numbers came in at the same time every single day, which I can almost guarantee are these 2 gentlemen walking their dog. And it's great. I mean, that's really what pays off. To engage with people who are interested, and also have the time to do this.
Well, my question to you guys is, as we look towards the future with CrowdHydrology, what does the future look like? What do you guys? What's your goals maybe for the next year, or maybe next 5 years, 10 years down the road?
Well, one of the big things that I've been advocating since we started this project is by keeping the barrier of entry low, this could be really useful in places where there's not only a scarcity of data, but like no data. And I'm particularly thinking of in developing countries, imagining where people have a cell phone, but there isn't necessarily an environmental ministry or a natural resources department that's out gauging streams. And if we could incentivize people in the headwaters of some basins to regularly not only contribute data just when they kind of feel like it, but also to target higher flow events that could be used for really valuable flood warning downstream. And I think that would be really a great thing to do, and continuing to look for opportunities to implement in that way.
Tell you one crowd right off the rip I can think of are bird watchers, ones that go down to these basins to take pictures regularly. Those folks will probably be more than happy to help out because they do carry their phones with them.
Yeah. And I don't know if you're familiar with EBird, but EBird is a citizen science program out of Cornell, and they're a wonderful group.
Jared, I think you had a question.
Yeah, hey guys. So I'm the coder nerd here. So it was awesome to hear about your embrace of open source. And if you want to write a climate parser for me, maybe we can stick some of your people on it. The climate reports from the Weather Service are a pain to parse. So, but all jokes aside, do you guys have any of this published out on like GitHub or any open source repositories where some of us aspiring geeks get a look?
Yeah, there's a GitHub site with so the software we actually gave a different name. It's social.water. And so if you if you look for social.water on GitHub, you will find our code base. I'm embarrassed to say, after giving my geeky credentials, that it's still in Python 2. I have not updated it to 3, which is where I work now. So if I was starting it today, it would be in Python 3. But that's actually another thing in the weeds that we're probably going to do in the next year or so. Get that converted over. But yep, it's all there, and you could even
I think it's phenomenal that
your own network.
Phenomenal, because I just love the fact that you have all these data points brought in by text message parsed out. That is so cool. Way to do more with less.
The other thing is, though, it's you're basically just reading numbers, right? And so if you have an identification number, you can look at other parameters. So we're happy to look at stream stage. We're starting to look at temperature, but you could adapt this for a lot of other kinds of things, like wind speed, right? What stops you from crowdsourcing wind speed and use the same code?
Or precipitation.
Yeah.
Just as long as it's a single number with a relatively simple identifier. So, for example, all of our gauge names have this two letter state abbreviation, and then a number between 0 and 9999, and that's the identifier. And then there's some floating point number in there. That's what we're looking for.
Well,
cool, guys. Just gave a star.
I see. Looking at your website, a lot of your gauges are in the Northeast and the Wisconsin, Minnesota area. I know why that is. But what's your plan? Would you guys like to expand maybe to the South, the Mid-South? Even out on the West Coast. I see a few in Oregon and California. But do you want to see this expand, or do you like it kind of? Is the information you get now with the areas that you're in, does that suffice?
No, we'd love to see it expand. Actually, there's some gauges that are going to go to North Carolina, hopefully soon, and there's some gauges that are going to go live in Maine pretty soon. There's someone that runs a similar program actually in Florida that may kind of be competing with us a little bit, although they have a limited network. But yeah, we're happy to see it show up anywhere someone would like it. We're happy to put a new state online at any time.
Well, one of our principles from the very beginning too has been crowdsourced data belongs to the crowd, right? So, I mean, you were asking how we use the data, and we do have uses for it, but our goal is not to collect this and put it in our little repository and do something with it. It's to make it available to everybody. And so, and our scrapers run and check the email account. I guess it's still 5 minutes, right, Chris? Yeah. So every 5 minutes they go out to the and parse for new messages. So if you go out and text in a message in a few minutes, if you do have a smartphone, you can go to that gauge's site and see your data point. But you can also see every data point that's ever been collected by the project. So we'd love to see these all over the place. That would be great. We want to facilitate other people to use the data, both for science and, for recreation, like whitewater people and fisher people that are trying to decide whether they want to go, float a certain river. What are the rapid conditions like? A lot of that can be determined just by knowing the water level.
And we have a viewer right now. Her name's Nina. She's saying great stuff. I see this really benefiting you businesses and build people who are building near flood-prone areas. Good job, everyone. So it seems like our viewers like it. My last question before we kind of wrap this up, I do consultant meteorology for emergency management offices in Western North Carolina, and I see the benefit of putting these out during flood events, and maybe even having your volunteer firefighters, go out and just text that information in, and that could really help out with rising water levels, during high water events with heavy rain and stuff like that. So good program. If anyone does want to get involved, I know you guys have kind of talked about it just a little bit. Tell us how that process is one more time, how we can get a hold of you, or how our viewers can get a hold of you and kind of sign up for this and then help you guys out.
Yeah, so the easiest way is if you go to crowdhydrology.com, there's a little form that you can fill out, and you can just say, hey, I'd like to get more information, and that email comes to us and we'll respond right away. And we can send out a little PDF of how to install these signs. We have a company that gives you a discount on the gauges, which was really nice of them. And we set you up with templates for all the signs, and then you're up and running. And all we ask in return is that you send us the latitude and longitude of where your gauge is and a picture of the gauge, and we get it up on the website, and we go from there.
Very cool. So I know you guys, we were talking last night on our little test session there. I know you guys have started a Twitter and Facebook accounts. You want to right now give those addresses out so our followers can follow you on social media.
Sure. Every single one is CrowdHydrology, one word. And so you can find us on Twitter, you can find us on Facebook, you can find us on Instagram. And just a word of caution, two hydrologists may not be the best tweeters, snappers, Facebookers, or whatever. So it's a little rough, but you know what? We're always up for comments. If someone wants to help us, we'd appreciate it, because this is.
Well, guys, I mean, the new thing is
deal.
pushing Snapchat. You gotta start getting with it with Snapchat now. I can't get that.
That's what my students keep telling me, and I say, you know what? I'm too old for this.
Hey, at least we don't have a MySpace site, right?
That's true.
Wow.
That's true. Yeah. And our email address is not at AOL.com. So.
Oh, really cool. Guys, stick around if you want to. We're gonna send it to Shay where he can give us the down low on the tropics as we're reaching the 9 o'clock hour, and then we'll do our tweets of the week, and we'll bring this show to a close. Shay, I'm gonna hand it off to you.
All right, Scotty, we're going to talk tropics now. Let me know when you can see the screen here.
We got you.
Okay, good. Here's the 8 p.m. update. The NHC updates are every 3 hours. Next one won't be until 11 o'clock p.m. This is the latest on Maria. As James said earlier, winds of 110 miles per hour. Pressure at 958 millibars, moving to the northwest at 12 miles per hour. The track from Maria brings it up across the northern southeast Bahamas and up towards the central Bahamas. These folks need to be on guard here. Hurricane warnings are up, and this system is going to come really close. The intensity right now is a Category 2, but it is expected to intensify, especially now that it's over the open water. It's not having any more of those effects from the mountainous zones of Puerto Rico, and then it's going to head to the northwest. From here, it gets a little bit uncertain. It looks like it may ride up the east coast, similar to what Jose did. It may come a little bit uncomfortably close to the eastern North Carolina, maybe Outer Banks in time, but it's just a little bit too early to tell. Sea surface temperatures are pretty warm over the Bahamas right now. We're looking at 86 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly 30 Celsius, and we have the warm Gulf Stream that peels up. Right now, Jose is up here over this cool water, which is going to keep it with a cooler core and keep weakening it. It may end up going extra tropical here in the next 24 to 48 hours. And then you'll see Maria start to come up. Now, these two may have some interaction. And there's a reason why that track takes it away from the coastline. Earlier, we were concerned that maybe it would come into the coast. And now we're just a little bit more certain that's going to stay offshore, but not entirely there yet. We see Maria coming up from the south. This is the GFRS run. We're getting out to about 3.5 days here. The key to remember is that Jose being up here to the north may actually help pull Maria away from the coastline. We also have a trough digging down here into the Gulf of Mexico. This whole lineup of troughing right here together will help to pull the storm out. One concern that I have is up here where you see the warm pinks and reds. That is a high pressure, an area of high pressure, pretty expansive, built up to the north, so it's a blocking feature. And that tends to push down a northeast wedge into these systems and drive them into the coastline. We see that expanding and then heading to the east. And right about here is where I start to get a little bit concerned that maybe that interaction with Jose, the GFS shows Jose pretty much dying off, and Maria ingests what's left of that. So when it gets to this point, it's going to be a little bit uncertain. And you're talking 162 hours out, so we can't really say very much about it beyond that point. We may have some interaction with the East Coast. We're just not sure entirely yet. Even the Euro model shows that as it heads to the south, it keeps Jose a little bit more prominent as Maria ingests what's left of there. But either way, in time, both models are in agreement with an upper jet swooping down. We can see it better on the GFS model at this point. In the upper dynamics, the jet stream really cranks up across the country. And so whatever's left later on in the life cycle, let these load a little bit, you see that jet swooping down and taking whatever there is left out to sea. So at some point, it's going to pull all the tropical activity away from the coastline. So those of you that are up north dealing with Jose, once again, what James showed this earlier, winds are 65 miles per hour, pressure 979 millibars, tropical storm force. And we see this NHC cone sort of expanded because that high pressure to the north with that northeast wedge may push the system, give it a nudge to the west. And some models are sort of indicating that this may actually go into New Jersey or someplace in the mid-Atlantic. So to keep in the circle very wide to include these places, you may see heavy rainfall, beach erosion, a little bit of wind, maybe tropical storm force winds at times as we go over the next 24 to 48 hours. It's really kind of muddled at this point. It doesn't look like it's going to go anywhere. So that high pressure to the north that I mentioned is going to keep this thing kind of capped right there. And we'll just have to wait and see what happens with Maria as it comes up from the south. It looks like Maria is going to weaken, especially hitting some of those islands in the shallower areas. It doesn't look like it's going to fully recoup. It could come back up to category 4 and then weaken again as it heads north over those sea surface temperatures. So if it stays out here, further out off the coastline, you can see the cooler waters right here, and that's going to help take away some of its fueling mechanism. Jose helped a little bit with that. You can see the swirl left over in the SST from NASA, where it actually stirred the waters up. So yeah, a little bit of a break there if it heads in that direction. If it heads a little bit more to the west, it's going to have warmer water. It could stay, it can maintain its status. So, we hope Jose helps. I know folks are pretty much saying, they're tired of hearing about Jose and everything, but Jose may be the very thing that keeps us from getting a landfall hurricane. And Puerto Rico really did not do so well. And that's going to lead me to the tweet of the week, Scotty. This morning, I know there's a lot of talk about Puerto Rico. We can't forget what happened in St. Croix and Dominica as the storm blew up. Maria went to category 5 with winds up to 175 miles an hour very quickly. And there was a lot of damages done. So I'll share my tweet of the week. Let me see if I can pull that back up again. May have to go back to Twitter. You know what? I'm going to pass this on. I'll come back to me because I want to pull this up. I don't want to waste time doing that. Go ahead, James, if you want to do your tweet of the week, or Jared.
I have mine ready while they get theirs.
Or Scotty.
Yeah, I've got mine too.
Yeah. So this is mine. This is from Dakota Smith. This is kind of an image of all three of our major hurricanes that's affected, I want to say the United States, I guess Puerto Rico being considered, with our territory. So again, this is, Shay, we were talking about this before the show. We've not had an active tropical season like this since, I believe, 2005. And with the Go 16, I mean, it has given us some jaw-dropping images. And this is the eye of all three of the major hurricanes that's affected the United States so far this year. So that is my tweet of the week. That is from Dakota Smith. So I will toss it back.
I found mine. I'll go ahead and pull that up real quick. This is as the rivers in Puerto Rico, and this wasn't just one. This was almost all major rivers in Puerto Rico that very, very quickly, like within minutes, rose from some of the seriously heavy rains, some of the torrential rains from Maria early morning hours. They got, I think, over 25 inches of rain in most spots, and rain's still falling. So we may be looking at 3 feet of rain. If you know anything about Puerto Rico and the mountainous zones, there's probably a lot of mudsliding. There's probably a lot of roads washed out and very fast moving rivers. But this is just one city, one flood from one of the rivers, and you can just see how torrential that is. And there are casualties with this storm. We just don't know how many yet. We really feel for those in Puerto Rico and the other islands of St. Croix and Dominica that felt the brunt of this. But yeah, that's just impressive. I can't imagine what it was like all over where all these rivers were. So back to you.
All right. Jared, you got yours ready?
I sure do. Let me get my screen up. We're going to stay on the topic of Maria. Very much thanks. So about, and this is kind of a late breaking edition to Tweet of the Week. So about 20 minutes or so ago, Josh Morgerman, iCyclone. If I always say that if Jim Cantore is in your town, that's not so good. But if Josh Morgerman is in your town, get the heck out of Dodge, because he knows how to take him right in the eye. And sure enough, he just tweeted for the first time in 14 hours, something like that. It says, "Yep, I'm alive," and he's amazing. And so he's still got a sense of humor intact after what he describes as a scary morning with a very violent core. So yeah, for those of you who are not familiar with Josh's work, he flies all over the world into the eyes of the most intense tropical systems, and he has bagged Maria, and very glad that he's all right, and hope that as many people as possible were able to escape harm down in Puerto Rico, at St. Croix, and on Dominica. So very, very sad situation for all of the Lesser Antilles, and they're going to need a lot of help.
Yeah, our sensors held up pretty well down there. We've got several weather stations. The ones that stayed online and didn't lose cell comms. We had reports of Sandy Point in St. Croix, western St. Croix. Report last night, just on the outside of the inner eye wall, had sustained winds of about 104 to 108 miles per hour, with gusts up to 137 miles per hour. So that was actually recorded at the surface level. And that was from a slightly east-northeast direction. So it wasn't quite catching that perfectly clean fetch. So you can only imagine right on that inner eye wall what the winds probably were. I mean, 175 mile an hour. It's intense.
All right, James, I'll come to you in just a second. I know you have something to add after your tweet of the week. So I'm going to let Chris if you guys have one, or I think Michael's got one. I can share it, Michael, if you need me to.
Yes.
All right. Let me get the screen share up, and then I'll let you talk about it right quick.
Yeah, cool. So being a data and coding nerd, the guys over at Data Camp were talking about visualization and sort of the value of these cones that we all look at, but they're the spaghetti plots, right? And there's a variety of ways to do that when you're looking at trajectories. And one of the common ways is just showing every model with a trajectory, but some of those are really valuable and some are really not, and so there are ways that we could do a lot better job of weighting the data. So it's worth reading.
You mean we shouldn't share data that's like 230 hours out?
No, it's actually not that. It's just that if you show if every model is shown with one line and those all have equal weight, you have no idea what's actually more likely than something else.
True. Excellent point.
Yeah. James, 384 hours, okay?
I'm sorry.
Right.
Chris, do you have one that you'd like to share?
I don't. No. But thank you.
All right. Sounds good. All right, James, it's all yours, bud.
All right, I'm going to start with my tweet of the week, putting it up on the screen now. We talked about the beautiful weather we have here in Charlotte and other portions of the Carolina. This is actually a Instagram photo, so sorry.
That'll work.
I do understand the difference between Twitter and Instagram, for the record. But this is the Greenway here in South Charlotte. It was a very lovely day out the other day, right at sunset, and I wanted to share that because I'm sure many folks are also out and about and enjoying the beautiful weather this past weekend and in the days to come.
Hey, James.
Yes, Scotty.
That looks like a good place to put a crowdsource hydrology.
That would be a great place for a crowdsource sensor, actually.
Let's do it.
We should talk offline. That area right there, as you could probably tell from the wood planks, is a floodplain. So it would probably be good to see some of that runoff.
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right, go ahead, James.
Okay,
Sorry,
am I supposed to go on to the next part now?
Yeah, I didn't mean to distract you. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. And this is the part where I'm going to start sounding like PBS and saying that this show is brought to you in part by viewers like you. So I just want to let everyone know that we have launched a new crowdfunding operation here at the Carolina Weather Group. So if you go to our website, carolinaweathergroup.com, where, of course, you can rewatch tonight's episode all about CrowdHydrology. Off on the right rail, we want to welcome you to our new Patreon support page, where if you are a fan of this podcast or videocast, we are soliciting some funds, not to profit, not to get rich, but just to keep us from going broke, because your friends here at the Carolina Weather Group are currently supporting our website and our other streaming operations out of what I'm referring to on the text here as the coffee fund, or the beer fund, or whatever you want to call it. So you may have noticed this past weekend our website went down a little bit, so I had to go digging through the couch cushions for a few more nickels and dimes. So we have created this great opportunity, and if you're not familiar with Patreon, what that allows you to do is to subscribe as a fundraiser supporter of our show. There are different tiers, and you get things in return. There is a rewards program, which include everything from a shout out on this broadcast right here to getting some personalized forecasts. So if you have a special event coming up and you would like one of the panelists here in the Carolina Weather Group to deliver a personal forecast of for a day and location of your choice, that's actually one of our crowdsource fundraising opportunities. And of course, as we've also been telling you about, you can download the Stormwatch Plus app and get severe weather notifications right to your phone for your location. And there's information about that on our website as well too, because you can support the Carolina Weather Group by downloading that and putting in the referral code Carolina. Scotty?
Yes, we'd appreciate anything that you can give. We have enjoyed doing this and look forward to continuing doing it. But like James said, if we get more funds, then we can do more things. So that's pretty cool, and thankful that James helped us set this up. So hopefully you'll be able to visit that sometime this week. And talking about next week's show, September 27th, we have Trevor Bouchard. He is a Weather Service meteorologist, and he's going to be coming on and talking to us about how to communicate weather with a diverse population. This is maybe a population that maybe doesn't speak English or has something going on that kind of helps or hurts them or hinders them from getting the weather information that we're able to give out. So Trevor will be joining us next week, and this is breaking news. He did win the NWA National Weather Association Person of the Year this afternoon at the conference. So we'll have to congratulate Trevor on that next week as well. So Trevor will be joining us, and then for the first part of October, we're going to be talking with Will Simon. He is a hurricane hunter pilot who actually flies into the storm. So we'll be joining us on the first Wednesday of October, and we'll put the rest of the schedule up on our Facebook page so you can see what's coming up in the next week. So again, we want to thank CrowdHydrology. Chris and Michael, thanks for joining us tonight. We look forward to maybe having you back on sometime later on, giving us a progress report of how things are going. And we appreciate you, our viewers who are watching tonight. Be sure to follow us on our Twitter and Facebook page, subscribe to our YouTube page, and our podcasts on Apple Podcasts and your Google Play stores, and share the word about us. So until next week, we hope you have a great weekend. Stay safe and enjoy this late summer weather that is affecting much of the Southeast.